from Hurricane Helene. You've obviously been on the ground in places like Georgia during this. What are you hearing on the ground in North Carolina?
Well, I was in North Carolina, and I got a pretty good dose because they asked me if I could help them with Elon Musk, who's a friend of mine and endorsed me, and I said, yeah.
We have said it time and time again on this show. Donald Trump isn't running for president. He's running to escape accountability. He's running for president, not to help our country, not to make it great again, like he claims he can. But no, it's because he is running away from accountability and running away from jail. And so as we get closer and closer to this election, we see Donald Trump becoming more and more deranged. And that is why it is so devastating for his campaign that he continues to do any sort of speaking engagement, whether that be a speech, whether it's a press conference, or in the instance of today, an interview with Ben Shapiro. What should be a softball interview? But Donald Trump's deranged brain somehow found a way to screw him over in it, as he lost his mind, really stunning Ben Shapiro himself, who was just again trying to throw softballs at Trump, trying to help him in this interview, but he couldn't. It was so incredibly bad. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave like on this video, and if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button and become part of the community. We are building on this channel. It really goes a long way. Now let's get into this first clip.
In 3, 4, 5 days. This is the most dishonest newspaper. They are disgusting. But the radical left, the way they protect. Now, you could say, wow, that's pretty good the way they do it. But it's so dishonest. We don't have a free press. We have a very, very corrupt, and, hence the name fake news. The problem with fake news is it's not strong enough. I think I get great credit for a wonderful name at the time. But it's worse than fake. It's corrupt. The press is corrupt. It's really bad in this country. It's really bad. And, the hard thing to understand, if you're driving a taxi or you're a lawyer or accountant or anything, you don't know. They write a story. You would assume it's true. You don't realize. When you're a newsmaker like I am, and you give them the story exactly as it is, and they write the story, and they make it exactly the opposite of what you've made it, you say you're fake news. But it is worse. It really is. The name fake news, I was very proud of it, but now it just isn't strong enough. It is just so corrupt. And I call it corrupt news. We're at a level now where it's absolutely corrupt. It's wrong. It's just so bad. And you don't understand why.
I think you can see what I mean by how deranged he has become. Fake news was a wonderful name. Do you think you created both of those words and then he started talking about taxi drivers and lawyers and corruption? He is so out of it. He is so full of anger. He is so full of rage. And it just continues to come out as that possible threat of imprisonment looms larger every day on Donald Trump. He is afraid of accountability. It's the reason we see him lash out. And it's the reason that he becomes even more crazed. And as Ben Shapiro was trying to help Donald Trump in this interview, it doesn't really do anything to get him where he wants to be, saying normal things, because he just can't. And right here is a perfect example of that.
From Hurricane Helene, you've obviously been on the ground in places like Georgia during this. What are you hearing on the ground in North Carolina?
Well, I was in North Carolina, and I got a pretty good dose because they asked me if I could help them with Elon Musk, who's a friend of mine and endorsed me. And I said, yeah, I think I can. What do you need? And they said, we need the Starlink, which is a big deal because they had no communication whatsoever. They said that there was just no FEMA. You virtually don't see anybody from FEMA. You're seeing a lot of private people going around and helping, but they can't help like FEMA could if they did it right. And they're very upset with what's happening with the federal government, as you probably have also heard. It's pretty sad, actually.
Ben Shapiro is one of the many Trump stooges who has been doing everything they can to lie about the hurricane relief that Vice President Harris and President Biden, of course, are providing to states like North Carolina and Georgia. So Ben Shapiro trying to help Donald Trump lie about this hurricane relief pretend President Biden and Vice President Harris aren't doing all they can. And Trump just pretty much rambles and gives a non-answer. And I'd like to give an actual answer for you. Hey, Donald, remember all the Republicans who voted against funding FEMA, Lauren Bieber Byron, Donalds, Marguerite Taylor Greene? Do you remember those people? Well, I do. So maybe we should be talking about them instead of lying about the response from the Biden-Harris administration. But of course, Donald Trump can't do that. And he had to lie about VP Harris S. more in one of the strangest ways I've seen yet, right here.
He is so angry at her, and she's trying to distance herself. She doesn't want anything to do with him. And, you know, it was a coup to start off with, okay? So she's not exactly thrilled with that. But I actually think he'd be doing as well as her. Let's see what happens. We have to see how it rounds out. But she had her honeymoon period. Now she's supposed to be doing things that, you know, you're supposed to be doing. And she's just doing a terrible job. And she's doing a terrible job in the storms, these hurricanes that are coming in. And they are big ones. And just totally missing in action. And always doing the wrong interview at the wrong time. You got to speak like
Mr. President,
like
you mentioned
Shapiro. Then you have to speak to Ben Shapiro, not the people that she's speaking to. She's speaking to these people about teddy bears. It's just so bad. It's so sad for our country.
Can someone please help explain what he means by doing interviews in which they talk about teddy bears? What is he even trying to say? VP Harris did one of the toughest interviews you can last night with 60 minutes an interview that Donald Trump dropped out of. And he's accusing her of not doing tough interviews. You're on Ben Shapiro right now. Is that a tough interview for you? You go on Fox and O and podcast. Are you serious right now? And it's only because, as we know, and as Trump knows, he can't give a real answer on anything, which is exactly what happened when he was asked about foreign policy.
describe what your second-term foreign policy will look like.
Yeah, number one, he wouldn't have taken Kyiv because you wouldn't have had a war, and you would have had the country just the way it is. I watched her interview, and it was a terrible interview, and just a terrible, terrible interview that this person can be leading. She's a very low intelligence person, and that she could be leading this country, it's just ridiculous. She's never going to lead the country. Now, other people around her, and they're very bad people, and they're not of our persuasion. They're fascists and Marxists and lots of other things. I can say communists because a lot of people don't understand a Marxist. You know, her father's a Marxist, and this is what it is. And our policy is very simple: peace through strength. We had no wars, and I'm not an isolationist. I helped a lot of countries. I kept countries out of war. We had two countries, smaller countries. I can explain it later, and I can explain who they are when we're together. But they were fighting, and they've been fighting for 1,000 years, and they go back and forth, and they were going to fight again and kill tens of thousands of people. And I said, look, you do that, there's going to be no trade. There's going to be tariffs put on your head. There'll be no trade, and that's for both of them, et cetera, et cetera. And 2 days later, they call me up that they've made peace. I do these.
You can sort of see the confused and a little disturbed look on Ben Shapiro's face when Donald Trump talks about the war. He prevented Sure with tariffs. He just sounds confused, and of course he just kind of wants to go back to the things that he feels comfortable with, just repeating the word tariff over and over and over again and pretending that that is an economic agenda, but of course it's not. And of course he's lying, but that is all he ever does. The only time he can tell the truth is when it is damaging to him. And that is exactly what happened when Donald Trump decided to bring up his relationship with Putin, which is getting a lot of coverage right now. But let's take a look at that.
Kamala and these people say about Kyiv, and people call it Kiev and they call it Kyiv. I've always called it Kiev. And it depends on what part of the world you come from is what I finally figured out. But when she mentions that, she's wrong for a different reason. Russia and Putin never would have attacked Ukraine ever when I was there. And I talked about it, and it was the apple of his eye. I got along with him very well, which is a good thing, not a bad thing. You know, a lot of people think that's a bad thing. No, that's a great thing. But he never would have attacked under any circumstances. Number one, the oil prices were much lower when I was president, so he didn't have the money to attack. At $40 a barrel, he couldn't attack. At 80, 90, and $100 a barrel, he made a lot of money. So, but it's not even that reason. That was a real reason, but it's not that reason. The reason he wouldn't have attacked was because of me.
So it shouldn't be a shock to any of us that Donald Trump wants to talk about how much he loves Vladimir Putin. It was recently revealed today in excerpts from a new book from Bob Woodward that Donald Trump has spoken to Vladimir Putin at least 7 times since leaving the White House. The details of those calls not yet known yet, but I think we can infer what Donald Trump, who is outspoken critic of aiding Ukraine, supporting our allies, I think we know what him and Putin were talking about. It's not going to be a shock when that information comes out, but certainly not something that makes me feel good when Trump is talking about how much Putin loves him, or another dictator that Donald Trump always loves when praises him that we saw right here.
Viktor Orban, a tough guy, smart guy, runs, as you know, he runs Hungary. And he made the statement that if Trump comes back, everything will be settled.
What type of voter is thinking, I really like VP Harris, but she hasn't been praised by Viktor Orban yet? I don't know if I can get there. Why does he think this is a really great talking point for him, I guess? It's just the narcissism. I guess he's just so wrapped up in loving his strong men that he looks up to so much because he's so insecure that it's all he can talk about. But we certainly are going to continue to call it out. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, you can leave a like on this video, and if you're stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.